Hello and welcome back to another Warcraft video. So today we're going to be covering a few more Gamescom interviews. These are with Tom Chilton and they're done by outlets like Mammy Twink, Blizz Planet, and I think it's this channel called Varian or something. I'll put links to them in the description of the video. Anyway, so this is just a Warlords of Draenor interview, you know, the usual kind of thing. This is the third time I've recorded this video because of numerous technical fuck-ups. But this one is going to work, hopefully. Anyway, so the very first topic to cover is the level 100 patch 6.0 content. Now, first of all, Tom said that there's a lot of changes in the works for Ashran. He didn't say anything specific in the interviews, however, we do know one or two of the changes that he was talking about. They've actually added mages to the two towers in Ashran. So, they'll be quite strong, there'll be things that you will want to kill for some sort of reward. And then they've also revamped how you deal with capturing the towers as well. So hopefully that's going to lead to some gameplay improvements. I will make a video on that though whenever I actually get a chance to give it a bit of a test. Alright, so next he said that there is going to be no rep for epics in the patch 6.0 content. So very much unlike 5.0 then, essentially reps and things like that are still going to exist. There will not be kind of reputation quest hubs or anything like that. It's all going to be sort of quests and various things you get from your garrison that you then sort of go out in the world to do, but there will be reputations and it just won't be tied to gear, so you'll maybe be able to get things like mounts, cosmetic pets, maybe talbards and things like that. I don't know, I'm not 100% sure that's the best way to go. I sort of liked being able to get maybe a little crappy 476 piece, but honestly, I think that having those at Exalted with, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 different reps to get was absurd in the start of Pandaria, was pretty terrible because of that. I think there's a healthy balance, and they're certainly going very heavily in the other direction here, but it could definitely work out quite well. Alright, so next he said that the level 100 content that you do is basically a mix of the Timeless Isle and patch 5.1. It's Timeless Isle-ish in the way that every single zone has got a level 100 area within it, full of strong mobs, elites, maybe some rare mobs, treasures and stuff like that. And it's similar to patch 5.1 in that every week you will get some sort of quest, and these quests will send you to various parts of the world, and you'll do some story-related stuff. There's a definitive start, middle, and end, but the kind of, I know, in-between, like, intermediate quests are apparently semi-randomized. Overall, it sounds like an interesting system, and I think it's definitely a good way of merging two of the stronger patches in terms of their, I suppose, specific strengths. Yeah, overall, I think it should be pretty good, although I still have to beta test it, and we'll find out what it's like then. Okay, so next he talked about new races and classes. Basically, the reason why there's no race being added is because they had to do the revamp. In terms of just raw, like, work for the art team, the revamp's actually a lot more intensive. If you think about the revamp, it basically requires doing a male and female version of all the current races, completely from the ground up. Now, adding a new race does mean a new starter zone, maybe some lore, you know, stuff, some more concept art, but in terms of the actual really raw art workflow, it only involves doing, like, 2 models. So, right now, they just need to get the revamps done, and there is an insane amount of work in that. The new models are so much more detailed, and there are also lots of little technical things that a lot of players wouldn't understand, like the way all the rigging and stuff's done, all the, like, new meshes and things like that. Basically, it's a more complicated process, but it's certainly worth it, and because of that, it just is going to take them longer than it would have done to make some of the older races. And I think that's fair enough. Now, in terms of classes, the reason why there's no classes being added is because we just had the monk added in Pandaria, and generally I think it's a good idea to sort of skip an expansion in terms of adding new classes. The reason for that is because it just allows everything to sort of, you know, like, just balance out, I suppose. I know that Cataclysm was actually really good in terms of PvP, or at least a lot of people told me that, so maybe we're going to have a similar effect, but certainly that's what Tom said, and I think he's definitely right. You know, adding a race every expansion would not be, or a class every expansion would be unfeasible. I think the game would end up being, well, having more balance issues, and yeah, just overall, it'd be really darn messy. Okay, so the final thing that he talked about was the free character customization that some people want to get. He said that personally he thinks it's a cool idea, and they're certainly talking about it internally, but there are no announcements. Frankly, I think that it should be a thing, and it seems like he thinks that personally as well. So we're just going to have to sort of see how it pans out. In a second, I just need to scroll down on my notes to the next topic. How fun. Alright, so next we got some of the future stuff. First of all, he said that they have ideas about what Farallon might be. They just don't know if it's going to fit in with Warlords. Basically, throughout all these interviews, he's been talking about the idea of Farallon just being very vague and perhaps not being a thing. That's had me worried, actually. And because Farallon was definitely planned for Draenor. And how do you know that? Well, like, the Warlords of Draenor Alpha had Farallon on the in-game map. Like, there was an island just sitting there. And the in-game version even had this big landmass that had Farallon written on it in some sort of green, like, texture brush. And now he actually said that they don't know whether Farallon is a separate island or if it is actually Ashran. Again, doesn't make sense. As a follower mission that involves going to investigate the fields of Farallon, surely we wouldn't have to do that if it was Ashran. Or, you know, Farallon and Ashran were the same thing. So overall, very strange. And the next thing he said is that the Tanaan Jungle will actually be the final patch, and that it's going to contain the final Burning Legion-influenced raid that has Grommash Hellscream as the final boss. A lot of people thought Tanaan would be patch 6.1. That is clearly not the case, because they're not just going to do 6.0, then 6.1, and then end the expansion. That would be a bit ridiculous, frankly. So, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen. Personally, I think it's going to be 6.0, then just some regular patch, you know, a small one. Then Fields of Farallon's going to come. Maybe Burning Legion or something. Then we'll have 6.3, and then finally 6.4 will be the whole Tanaan Jungle stuff. Though, yeah, I don't know. I still feel like Tanaan Jungle should have been there, honestly, as a bit of leveling up content. Because right now, the Warlords of Draenor leveling experience does kind of end at a bit of a meh. Like, it ends at a really cool moment, plot-wise, but it doesn't end at a... You'll see when you get there. That's what I'll say for now. Okay, next he said that the cosmetic class items that are being planned are still on track. That's things like Hunter Quivers, Vials of Poison for Rogues, stuff like that. Basically, they're going to be added in slowly over time from patch to patch and expansion to expansion, so maybe by the end of the next expansion we'll have all of them added, but I'd say certainly we should expect to see some of those things be added in Warlords of Draenor. Despite them saying that there are no planned class quests, these little customization things do seem like prime candidates for class quests. Or at least in the future, maybe you could do a class quest and, I don't know, unlock a really epic quiver or something like that that had a cool spell effect. Not 100% sure, but anyway, let's move on with the future stuff. He said that at some point they would like to do more class customization options, so, you know, new faces and things like that. Right now for 6.0, there's a lot of work going into making sure the original options are well represented with the new models, so that's taking up all their time, but he did say that ultimately the new way of doing things should be drastically better for just making new faces, you know, instead of trying to hack things together by painting on a weird lip texture to try to make it look shaded or something in a certain way, they can actually just make the facial geometry now far better with the new facial system. So hopefully that's going to mean that in the future we will get more character customization options and things like that. I like more hair and, you know, just those little things you can change at the barbershop without having to, like, buy a new character customization change. Anyway, so finally, actually no, not finally, let's just move on to lore, because I've got no more points in that section. So in terms of lore, he said that they really had decided the Warlords of Draenor, like, story, basically before Pandaria came out. He did mention that a few of the finer details hadn't really been polished out, but early on they realized that the best way to move from the Pandaria setting to the old Draenor setting was to do the Garrosh time travel arc. And yeah, they just wrote that into the story, I guess. Overall, I think it worked out quite well. They're two very different stories. He did say they want a lot of flow between expansions, and setting-wise there is really no flow, but plot-wise they do make it flow decently well. So I suppose that does make sense. He also said that Warcraft is more about setting rather than plot. I think that's actually true, and, you know, going through the old expansions and things like that, you know, I really enjoyed the setting of TBC, Wrath, not so much Cataclysm and not so much Pandaria, even though I do love, like, Asian-style stuff. It just, for some reason, Pandaria didn't feel like a very good interpretation of it, bar one or two pretty set pieces. But Draenor certainly is a fantastic setting, I can definitely say that from my beta experience. Okay, so next, in terms of lore, he said that the Iron Horde is the main enemy, however, as the expansion goes on, we'll have more of a Legion presence. That's obvious, I think, because the Burning Legion are really not too happy with what went down with Manaroth, so they're going to want to, you know, just get back and control the orcs or do something like that. Okay, so next, He said that in general they don't want to rely on alternate timeline stuff too much in terms of getting those cool expansion settings that I talked about earlier, but he said that they're definitely going to do it when it sort of makes sense. And I guess Warlords of Draenor is one of those examples. In general though, I think that doing too much timeline stuff would be a really terrible idea because it feels contrived, and it's okay for a one-off expansion, but if they've got nothing but like constant contrivance expansions, then I think it would suck pretty hard. In general, after Warlords, I don't want to go back and time travel for maybe 3 more expansions. I just want the plot to move forward. I think that would certainly be the best way to do it. Okay, so the next thing he said is that the reason why Ashran is being fought over is because it's got like strategic value. Basically, after 6.0, we will own like this half of Draenor, with Tanan being this bit, and then Ashran's off on the coast facing the Dark Portal, so we can sort of, you know, bollocks the Iron Horde from this side, and then whoever owns Ashran can do the same from that side. Of course, it makes no sense us fighting, because the Alliance and Horde are actually buddied up. You know, lore-wise, we're both kind of small expeditionary forces that have been battered pretty hard, and at the end of the Nagrand questing experience, no spoilers by the way, but you do end up sort of being buddy-buddy with everyone, with Khadgar sort of sitting in the middle, being everyone's friend. So it just doesn't make much sense to have the big war going on in Ashran. In terms of other things, he said that Vol'jin is going to play more of a side role. Basically, he's just going to be, you know, back running the Horde and trying to pick it up after all of the rebellion stuff. I think that's the right thing to do with Vol'jin. Then finally, he said that the whole plot that was covered in the War Crimes novel is really going to be, like, referenced in the game, but not really overtly told. I don't think that's a good way of doing it, though, because players need to understand what's going on with the expansion. That currently doesn't really happen too well. So yeah, I think a lot of people are going to have major misconceptions about just what the hell's going on with Draenor. So, a bit odd. I think they should have just something to tell that story in-game. Alright, so with all that said, let's move on to Garrisons. Yes, that's my next topic. So he said that originally the garrison buildings were basically just modifiers for the missions that you sent your followers on, but they realized that was a terrible design because it didn't really involve doing anything with your own character. They've changed that. Now basically buildings have got direct implications on your character. They give you buffs and perks, and many of them also give you quests and things to do. That's very good. It's a much better design. And in terms of other things that he said, well, they also changed garrisons from being a predominantly endgame thing to be something that you actually get a lot of early flexibility with. For an example, you get your level 2 garrison with a lot of plots in it before you leave Shadowmoon Valley. So it really does all unlock rather quickly, though we'll have to see what their final version of that is like. And then finally he said, about, well, in this point anyway, that they are planning on updating quite a few of the buildings in the beta. One of the examples that he gave was that the Gladiator Pit was going to be updated to have this Battle Royale thing, and if you win the Battle Royale you can get access to some transmog gear, so I think that's also pretty cool. Basically, they're still iterating in Garrisons. All my concerns about Garrisons still stand, as I've covered in the top 5 criticisms video. So yeah, we'll just have to see how they pan out, I suppose. He also said that there is some new pet battle stuff coming in through Garrisons via the Pet Menagerie and a few daily quests. And then finally, he said that he thinks that there is a lot of depth in Garrisons. I don't know why I said finally, because he actually said one more thing. He said that they may update Garrisons a bit more in the future. He talked about adding some new buildings, they have ideas for buildings, and he also talked about adding a 4th level to the garrison that would unlock some more plots, and that they're going to decide what to do based on player feedback. And then finally, in this interview, he talked about, well, this isn't one interview, this is like 3 sort of condensed into one video, but yeah, finally he talked about the cities. So with Bladespire and Karabor, basically he said that they were so big that they found it very hard to actually get a good experience with them. And also, there's a lot of overlap between Bladespire and Karabor. Well, not them. There's a lot of overlap between the functionality of a capital city and the garrison already, and they just didn't feel like that left them with enough to actually put in Bladespire and Karabor. What I'd say is that it doesn't matter having a bit of duplication between them, and looking at the Ashran hubs, and the way things are sort of, you know, laying out inside those, they totally would be able to do Bladespire and Karabor, in my opinion, honestly. Like with Karabor, they could have just put things in the inside, and maybe not put as much, but you know, in the outside in the big gardens area, but maybe just put 1 or 2 cool things there. And for Bladespire, they could have done some travel convenience things, like maybe there's like a pulley system, you click on it and it sort of pulls you up to the top. They could have done lots of cool little things like that, you know, maybe like an elevator or something. But overall, look, the Ashran ones work, they do the job. My only problem is that visually it's a little bit dull, you know, between them and the Garrisons, it's all kind of samey. But from a gameplay perspective, it certainly does work. Yeah, anyway, that's basically it for the interviews. Now, the reason why I've got Garrosh and Tassadar behind me is because I needed to block out light. There was just an insane amount of daylight today, and it messed up my camera's exposure, and just lots of problems. The good news is I've got 2 softboxes coming, so they should help out with that. And also just be sure to let me know what you think about the editing of this video, because I may sort of clip in little bits of gameplay and stuff like that, just to see how people like it. But really, that's it for the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.